things started to shift, and I really didn't know what was going on, but I just knew we had some tension there. And then June 23rd came up. He came over and just said, "Hey, let's talk about this. Whatever. We're kind of butting heads a little bit. Let's meet up in the morning." We did, and blindsided me. He had his lawyer there. Totally just said we're parting ways. Everything was moved out of the account.
How much ownership did he have?
50%. But the thing is, we did a handshake. We didn't have an agreement in place.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, we just trusted him. I mean, we hung out a lot. We were working together from pretty much 2008 all the way up.
You built that large of a company and didn't have anything on paper?
Nope.
So on paper, he owned it?
Yep. He went and got the license.
Fuck.
Because through that.
Hey, everybody. I'm Eric Oberembt, and you're listening to Be Authentic or Get the Fuck Out. We talk about real shit, what's on our minds, and don't give a fuck if it makes you feel a little uncomfortable. So sit back, strap in, and get ready for some real shit. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Be Authentic or Get the Fuck Out. I'm your host, Eric Oberembt, sponsored by nobody. Nobody sponsors this shit. So Be Authentic pays for everything. D&M Roofing pays for everything. But if you want to be a sponsor, hit me up. We are still trying to get Zyn for all your nicotine needs. It's fucking delicious. The cinnamon is my favorite. So we're trying to get Zyn to come on and go ahead and sponsor the show. Don't think that's going to happen. So today we are here at D2D-Con 7. Super excited. We've got a bunch of interviews scheduled, but I'm really excited for this one. We talk a lot about one of the reasons that I started doing this podcast was so we could have an opportunity to actually sit down and have cool conversations with people maybe that we don't know very well, so that it's not just the, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. How's your kids? Blah, 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 right? We actually get to sit down and dig into a little bit of shit and get to know somebody so that y'all can get to know that person as well. So with no further ado, let's introduce our guest today. And I'm going to fuck up the last name, so I'm going to let you do it. Tony Flattum. Okay, Tony Flattum. Tony, thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, you bet, man. Thank you for having me.
We met just recently, like really just met recently at another conference. And everybody, like I talked to 3 different people and they're like, "Do you know Tony?" And I'm like, "I don't know Tony." And they're like, "Well, you fucking need to know Tony." And I'm like, "Well, why the fuck do I need to know Tony?" And they're like, "I don't know, but I think you guys would really get along and you'd like each other." And I'm like, okay. So that's literally why we're here. Because like I wanted to get to know Tony because I had 3 different people tell me. I've learned it takes 3 people. It takes 3 people for me to go, that's a good idea. Right? Whether it's business or friendship, whatever it is, right? I need 3 people to tell me that something's a good idea, then I'll believe it. If one does, I'm like, you're fucking crazy. You don't even know what you're talking about. Right?
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. Do you need that kind of what gets you confidence on something like that?
Yeah, you definitely want to get good validation from people, making sure that you respect them. If they're giving you good validation back on somebody that they recommend, absolutely.
And the reason I ask that question, because it's something that I actually talk to, I work with my coach about. And so he learned that about me, right? That it takes me 3 people before I'll make a decision on something like that, where he isn't. Like he's completely different and he doesn't need to have that many validations or even have somebody tell him. He wants facts. Like he just wants to see facts or whatever. So everybody's different. Tell me about your business.
Yeah, so right now currently our name is Built Strong Exteriors. We went through a few partnerships earlier on with some business partners, but we started back in 2016.
So I'm assuming since they were business partners that something went awry.
Yeah, the first one was more of just like going different directions, kind of just parting ways that way. But the second one that we had was a really brutal one, cutthroat, ended badly, a lot of money lost. Me and all my reps got screwed over and then left that company and came over and got Built Strong going.
So let me ask you a question about that. I didn't have any intention of going down this path, but I'm very interested in people that, or not in people, but I'm interested in the story behind why people end up going into business with other people, right? I never have, because I'm scared to death, and maybe it's a control thing, but I'm scared to death of doing like an actual partnership with people because I just assume I'm going to get fucked in the ass with no lube. I just assume that that's what's going to happen, right? When you did like do one of your first partnerships or whatever, what was the mentality behind it, and then how did it go bad?
Yeah, so originally I started off on my own, just using a company that was qualifying. They were qualifying me.
In what state?
In Minnesota.
Okay.
So they were.
Do you have to get qualified in Minnesota?
Well, I didn't have a license then.
Oh,
so
okay.
I was
okay.
selling for a company previous, and the guys that had another company open, they were trying to recruit me to come over for a few years from the previous company, and I just wasn't ready to leave yet. So then when I was ready to leave, I made the jump over, and then they just said, hey, they were down working the hurricanes in Florida. I was in Minnesota in 2006. So I called them and said, hey, I want to get something going in Minnesota. I'm looking for you guys, maybe help me out. Don't know what I'm doing. And they just said, here you go, use the name, use the license, and we'll pay you, pay a qualifying fee, and everything's already branded, everything's already in place. So I did that, made the jump over by myself, started getting it going, started building it up and doing all that. And then eventually, when they were done down in the hurricanes a few years later, they were seeing us really rocking and rolling in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And their partnership, because there was two of them originally, they decided to part ways. He was just, not on bad things, they were just parting ways. He was done, kind of burnt out.
Okay.
And then when he came back up to Minnesota, he's like, hey, we should just team up and grow this thing. Like, we can keep Florida going, we can keep Minnesota going. And so we did. So then I became a 50-50 partner with that.
Okay.
With the original owner of the company that I jumped on board with. And then we built that thing up. Like, we were all over chasing storms back in the day.
Oh, shit.
From Hurricane Ike down in Houston to, Fayetteville, Atlanta,
Oh, was
Colorado.
Ike in Houston?
Yep.
What year was that?
08.
Oh, okay.
So we were in 08 down there, and then just kind of bounced all over, worked a lot of storms from Chicago to Denver, Connecticut, and then we started doing franchising.
Oh, okay.
So we
what was the name of that company?
Storm Guard Restoration. It's still around.
Okay.
So we sold it off to a franchising company when we parted ways, and I got to rebrand and keep my Minnesota location with all my people.
Okay.
And then rebrand, and then just got out of the Storm Guard
Gotcha.
entity.
Okay, and then you started Built Strong.
So not yet.
Oh, not yet.
So
Okay.
that was one where when we were parting ways and going different directions, because I was like, really getting burnt out traveling and just getting all the storms set up and from different markets.
Did you have a family and kids then?
But we was just starting to have family and kids. So it was just really tough for me to be gone. I was the one doing all the field training, knocking doors and training everyone in the field through all these 11 locations. So we were just trying to figure out like a way of, started to franchise it to where I wouldn't have to be out there as much, but then I still had to go out there and service them and make sure that they're up to speed on things. So I just started to decide, like, I want to just pull back and be in Minnesota and not travel as much right now.
Yeah.
So I made that switch in 2013. Well, my whole team together, we had about 25 of us in the team. And at the time, my sales manager, him and I, he had a lot of guys, I had a lot of guys, and we just said, let's just team up. Let's just partner up and keep this whole thing together. So we rebranded and got that going in 2014.
Okay.
And then we had that run. It was like a 2.5 year run. We spiked up to a good number and really growing. But our last year, over that 2015, things started to shift. And I really didn't know what was going on, but I just knew we had some tension there. And I was always out in the field training, working with my guys. He was more running the inside office, holding everything together there. And then June 23rd, came up, he came over and just said, hey, let's talk about this, whatever. We're kind of butting heads a little bit. Let's meet up in the morning. We did, and blindsided me. He had his lawyer there, totally just said we're parting ways. Everything was moved out of the account, moved over to his new account. He had us leave the building because he just said, you gotta leave. The lawyer said, you gotta leave. And so they
How much ownership did he have?
50%. But the thing is, we did a handshake. We didn't have an agreement in place.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, we just trusted him. I mean, we hung out a lot. We were working together from pretty much 2008 all the way up.
You built that large of a company and didn't have anything on paper?
Nope.
So on paper, he owned it?
Yep. He went and got the license.
Fuck.
Because through that whole thing, like, I was literally, when we got the new company going, I was working with the other owner, getting everything closed out.
Yeah.
So I was doing all of that, wrapping things up, closing that stuff out. He was in charge of getting the new license and getting all that going. So he put everything on his name, on the company, and I was more of like a silent owner at that point. I'm like, you know what, no big deal. We'll get a contract in place. We'll get all this stuff going. Let's just get rolling. And we were already friends for like a handful of years and hanging with our family.
Yeah.
And we were hanging out and whatnot and growing this company. So I'm like, let's do a handshake deal and we'll get to it. We just never got to it. We never got to it. So then,
boy, if you're listening, people, that's the fucking golden nugget today. Don't do a goddamn handshake deal in business.
They don't work anymore. I mean, I trusted the guy completely, and I was always a trusting guy, too. I was always like, hey, I trust everybody until I don't.
Until I don't, And now it has to be the opposite.
Yeah, I'm a little more careful.
Yeah.
I do still trust people, but I verify a lot more.
It's a lot more trust but verify. Yeah, I have adopted that mentality the last 5 years, right? Because I grew up in a, I grew up with my grandfather, right, who started our roofing company, and so like I grew up in the fucking 60s, 50s, right, basically, because like he was my dad and I lived with him, right? So like I lived in that era because like he never fucking left it, right? And I grew up on that, like, you can do handshake deals, like you can trust people as long as you're doing the right thing. I assume that other people act like I do, right?
Exactly.
But then you learn that most people don't, right? Like most people pretend they do, but then they're actually a piece of shit down the road and they're really only looking out for themselves, right? Yep. Which I get, like I get the fact that you need to look out for yourself, right? But at the same time, don't pretend you have fucking integrity, right? When you said you were going to do something and then you do the other fucking thing.
Yeah.
Right? That shit just drives me absolutely crazy. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But that
it was a tough time. I mean, it was back in 2016, middle of the year too, where we're like,
oh yeah, you said June.
Yeah, it was in June. So he, for some reason, thought that it'd be better to come in and just cutthroat me in the middle of the season, and me and all my guys that were with me in the middle of the season. So we're like, what the hell do we do now? So really, after that happened, I mean, we sat down, we were like brainstorming, trying to figure out if we were going to go, get our license, get all this stuff in place. And then really it just, decided, like after the 4th of July, we kind of took some time there, came back, all sat down, all 8 of us, and we're like, what should we do? What's our game plan? And we didn't want to waste the whole year, on trying to like brand stuff and figure things out. Well, luckily my brother originally started the company in 2014, but he worked out of his house. It was more of a smaller business that originally started Built Strong. And then when that all went down, I reached out to him and said, hey man, we want to jump on board, get a separate location going. You can keep doing your thing at what you want to do and keep it simple and small. And he didn't want a really big company. He wanted to just do enough jobs to keep busy and live a good life. So we came over, and that's what we did. We just got it going, and been building it ever since 2016.
So do you stay in Minnesota then?
Yep, we cover Minnesota and Wisconsin because we're close enough to the border, so we cover western Wisconsin, and all that. So,
and that's got to be kind of a game change, like that. That's a better life or a different life. I mean, maybe it's not better, but it's different for sure, right? We're not having to chase.
Yeah, and we're getting big enough now to where the kids are growing up a little bit. I have a big enough team to where I can kind of divide and conquer to where we do want to open more locations. But it won't be me down there doing it all day long. Like I can go down, set it up the right way, put everyone in place, the right people, and then at that point, just check on it and just keep it going.
I think that the storm chasing, it gets romanticized, right? And I think it's kind of like going to college, right? Fuck, it's fun in your 20s. Right? Yeah. But like you start to get a little bit older and it's like, I don't know if I really want to live on a fucking air mattress in an Airbnb, and you know what I mean? Like, and I think people start to figure that out, but when they first start getting in, they're like, I'll go here, I'll go here, I'll go there. And it's like, it doesn't always work out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that it did. Like, you made money and, whatever, but
great.
But it can wear on you, and I don't think people think about the long term. And the fact that you kind of saw it and were like, hey, look, we can do it. Now let's pull back. And you still got a business that's doing a shitload of revenue, right? And everybody's making money and you're having a good time, right? Yeah. And it's like, why would we do anything else if you don't have to?
Right. And back in the day, it was the whole model of storm chasing, but now we kind of look at it as storm catching, right? You want to be in a market, open a location up, get some guys that are local that can kind of build around it and build that brand locally.
Absolutely.
And so we'll eventually be doing that here in the near future.
Good. I love that. So one of the questions I always like to ask people, and I asked it when I sent you a questionnaire thing, I'm not going to bring it up and reread it because I don't want to repeat what you said. I want you to be authentic with it. Yep. But give me something that you're like truly passionate about.
Yeah, well, I love helping people succeed. I love to be able to see the people that come into a business, or even not the business, but just helping them and change their life. So that's why I've been doing this for 22 years. So everyone's always like, why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep going? And why, I mean, you can probably retire or whatever, but it's like, I love seeing the new guys coming in.
Yeah.
And changing their life to where now they're buying properties, they're investing in land. We have guys that are buying cabins.
That's fun to watch, isn't it?
And they're young guys that are coming in and getting on the right path instead of coming in and blowing it on stupid stuff.
Yep.
Like, I'm really big into real estate investing as well, so I would give a lot of advice and helping out and trying to get them guys to put it to work early on, so then when they're 40, 50 years old, they're in a much better spot.
Yeah, that makes it fun. Is there any type of any charities and stuff that you are passionate about that you really that you like helping?
Yeah, our main one we do a lot, but our main one is Coco's Heart Dog Rescue. It's a local near our area. My wife does a lot of the fostering for that. We foster dogs as well. And she's a mentor to where she has a team underneath her to where they go out and do their first adoptions. We sponsor all their events. They built a brand new building 2 years ago. We installed the roof for free for them.
Oh, cool.
On there just to make sure, help them out and get that taken care of. So.
So I was looking over some notes that you had sent in, and I love the fact that you actually wrote this down. And I'll paraphrase. But you were shitty in school.
Absolutely.
And I love that because I don't really connect very well with anybody that was good in school. Because we just all live different fucking lives, right, than those people. Because like I feel like the people that were really good in school, generally speaking, right, and maybe I'm wrong. I love making generalities, right? But I feel like the people that were really good in school and like loved fucking school are the ones that go out and get that 9-to-5 job, and you know what I mean, and like, this is what I make and this is what I do, and I go home and I'm fucking miserable with my old lady, and you know what I mean, like there's no real drive or passion there because they didn't have to. Right. And I just always connect with people that had that same mentality, because just to give you a little bit of insight into me, like I did fine in school, right? Like, and I only went to class because I wanted to be able to play sports, right? And then I went to college for a while, and I ended up quitting school because I couldn't find a parking space. Like, I literally drove around the campus for a fucking hour, and I was like, this is stupid. Like, I can't find a fucking parking space. And I literally called my grandpa, and I was like, hey, Grandpa, I'm quitting school. Do you got any more appointments I can take? And he was like, why are you quitting school? I'm like, I can't find a parking space. I'm like, fuck this place. He's like, are you sure? I'm sure. I'm fucking done. And he was like, okay. And that was it. That was how I quit. But I always remember getting into so many disagreements and arguments with like teachers and professors and people like that like thought they understood business too. Yeah. Right. And they didn't. And like, I was living it right in the business, like with my grandfather. And I fucking hated school. And so it's always fun to have a conversation with somebody that had the same experience. Right. So tell me about your experience with that. Yeah.
So for me, it was more book smart. Like it was tough for me. Like I couldn't read very well.
Oh, really?
I would like have to read things 2 or 3 times to even understand the question. So like when we're doing tests, it seemed like everyone was up and moving on right away. And I'm sitting there still trying to get through the test and pass, but not passing very high. It was a struggle. It was just tough and didn't really have a lot of education growing up. So,
were you diagnosed with anything? Like, do you have ADD or any of that bullshit?
No, I don't think so. I just really never dove into books, and I just had a hard time paying attention, it seemed like. So it was just.
Did you graduate?
I did graduate.
Okay.
Yeah. And I pushed for that because my mom and dad didn't graduate.
Oh.
So they dropped out in 11th grade because my mom had my brother, which was 11 years older than me. So they both dropped out of school and raised him and started a family and got into their day-to-day jobs. So they were like wanting me to graduate. They were really pushing me to graduate. So I fought through. Obviously just showed up every day and did what I could and got through it, and never really read books until like probably 35 years old. Like I just never got into it. Like it was hard.
Do you read now?
I do read now.
Okay.
Yeah. After it was a lot more audiobooks, and then I started getting more information, getting really into it, and now I start reading books, and then I listen to a lot of audio, a lot of motivational stuff now, to where it really is just like excelling me to the next level.
Yeah. We started doing that. So I have like a group coaching call that we do twice a month, and we just started implementing different books every other month. Just because some of these guys that join up, I mean, I just assume that people read. Right? Because I do now. Yeah. But then I remember like 10 years ago, I didn't fucking read. You know, and I'm like, oh, well, these guys that are joining and want help and like want to be part of a community and all this stuff, like maybe they don't know that they're supposed to read and that's how you get better and learn things, right? Like we can only learn so much in the field.
Yeah.
Right. And then as we're trying to grow teams and grow people and make them better and stuff, it's like, well, if we don't do something to better ourselves, then how are we expected to make them better?
Well, it seemed like early on, I mean, everything that I was having to read, I was like pushed to read or didn't want to read. And
so you're being made to do it.
And didn't like the topic or whatever else. So I was like, fuck reading.
Do you not like being told what to do, Tony?
Exactly. Yeah. There is a little bit of that in there too. I mean, somebody says you can't do this, I do it.
Right.
You know?
I automatically fucking push back if somebody tells me to do something. If you ask me to do something, then we'll have a conversation.
Right.
But the minute somebody tells me, and I try to do the same thing in my business. Tell me if you do the same thing, but I try very, very, very hard with all of my staff that I don't ever order them to do anything. I ask them, it's fucking implied that you need to do it, right?
Yeah, we lay out a good roadmap. We lay out a good plan for them.
But it's
we
like,
don't make them do it.
You're right. But I mean, even like W-2 staff, that it's like, you need to fucking do that. You need to do that. You need to do that. I think it's just the language, right, that people use, like when you're communicating though, is because I know that if somebody orders me to do something, I'm immediately going to get defensive and I'm immediately going to tell them to go fuck their mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
You the same?
Yeah, I am. I mean, it is. When you want to push back, you want to...
So do you have a partner now?
I do not have a partner now. No.
So you own 100% of the company?
Yes.
So there's nobody to tell you what the fuck to do?
No, but I have a leadership team that I lean on a lot.
Of course.
And they obviously come in and then they pretty much run the company.
Okay.
You know, they're the ones that are out there doing the day-to-day. I make final decisions.
Yep.
They'll bring all of it and I'll make the vote. So
yes. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Right? That's absolutely how it should be. How big's that leadership team?
We have 6 of us on the team.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about what that looks like, because there's a lot of people that are watching this that are either starting businesses or growing or whatever, and would probably like to know kind of what that leadership team looks like and like how that works, how that dynamic works.
Yeah, so pretty much we went through people over the years of different departments, but as we got to like our main production manager that was there for a long time that really was doing the right job, we would move that person up. So we have one person on our leadership team from production. Mm-hmm. We have one on there from like our PA department, project analyst, which is supplementing. We have them in there.
Oh, that's a cute title for it. I've never called it that.
Yeah, we changed it up a little bit. So
say it again.
Project analyst.
Oh, project analyst. I like that.
So we have that.
I might steal that, Tony.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we have that, and that person in there, and then we also have our sales manager, which is now our sales director. He moved up this year to sales director. We're replacing with underneath him 4 sales managers. So we have, and then we have my consultant that comes in as well, and then we have our AP. Our accounts payable.
So who's the consultant and what did they do?
Yep. So Ty Adams is.
Oh, I didn't mean you had to actually tell me his name, but yeah.
But Ty Adams, business results. He's a friend of mine. We were actually in the company together back in 2002 when we were working back in the day, and then he parted off and went and did his thing. I went and did my venture, and then eventually he left the companies that he was at to start doing some consulting, and he was more of like the guy that did like SOPs, KPIs.
There you go.
Really dialed in to where that's what I sucked at. So I knew what I was good at and knew what I sucked at. So we teamed up in 2018, had him come in, hired him to have him come in and just do all the things that I was not good at to put more structure in place so we can grow the company. And I had the vision to grow where we wanted to go.
And then he stays on that leadership team. It's almost like a board.
It is.
Right? But then those guys or gals are running. So if you've got your one guy that's your head of production, then he's managing your 3 to 8 to 10 production managers that are underneath that are running jobs, right?
Yeah, and our production manager is actually a woman. So we have Jackie runs production, Michelle runs our department for supplementing, and then Deb runs all of our collection department, and then Reed runs the sales team. And then
okay, I'm going to get into I'm going to piss off a lot of people here with this question. How has that worked for you, having a lot of women inside of your company?
Awesome.
Has it?
It is.
Okay, it didn't fucking work for me.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, they bring a lot of value. And they look.
And
at
I'm not
things
saying,
differently.
like, just to be fucking clear, I'm not saying that we don't, right?
Yeah,
like, I've the last fucking 5 years, I've had these really bad experiences, and I don't know how to make them better, and I want to make them better, right? Like, I really want to, and that's why I'm curious, somebody that's having, department heads.
Yeah, we got
that
probably
are
pretty blessed because, I mean, they're really dialed in and they're really organized, and obviously we're not as organized.
Yeah, no, agreed, yeah.
So having them, I mean, I've had before her in production, I had probably 4 or 5 different production managers.
Okay.
And over the years, and then she came over on board in 2018, I think it was. Yeah, 18. And she's been just really elevating and growing. So I kept bumping her up.
That's awesome.
And then now she's on her leadership team, and yeah, they're awesome. Michelle's awesome. Deb's awesome. They're all doing a great job.
That's awesome. It sounds like you have a really good dialed in kind of team and system and process, and can be easily duplicated, right?
Yeah. And every year we're dialing in even more. Like every year, like this time of the year in our slower season, in the winter months up there, we're always making tweaks, figuring out what we sucked at, what we can get better at, what we need to change.
That's our winter debrief.
Yeah.
And we sit down, and I'm like, the other thing I tell people is, one, don't ever fucking ask me to change CRMs, because you're out your goddamn mind, and I'm not going to do that. But B, if it ever had to happen, don't ask me in June, asshole. Have you ever, and I'm sure you've had that, people ask
3 times. We've changed 3 times over my 22 years of doing this.
Oh, fuck. But you did it in the winter, right?
Yeah, most of them were over the winter, yep. And also when we were parting ways, we changed different CRMs and whatnot too. So there was a few different things happening there. But
that's such a nightmare. Like, oh my God. Just for fun, nobody gives a shit that's watching, but what CRM do you use?
Use AccuLinks.
Oh, okay. All right. You've been an AccuLinks guy for a while?
Yep, 6 years.
Okay. Lexi, cut that. I don't want to give them any pub. I don't like AccuLinks. No, I'm kidding. I don't fucking care. All right. Well, as we wrap up, what I like to do at the end of every episode is I always like to give the floor back to the guest because a couple of different reasons. One, guests usually always come here with something that they wanted to talk about, or something that they wanted people to hear, either about themselves or what they wanted to, or maybe they wanted to ask me a question, like, no fucking idea, right? Or we talked about something here that didn't go deep enough. And so I always like to give the floor back, so that if there was anything on any of those realms that you wanted to bring up, last 3-4 minutes is yours.
Yeah, no, I would just say that, for one, I want to at least sit down with you two and meet you. I've watched you, and I've seen you quite a bit, and I've talked to TW. He's a good friend of mine, and he's always mentioned to reach out to you. So I want to come on here and just meet you, for one. And then also, I mean, we're growing our company, and we're looking at doing some coaching and whatnot too. We want to just help people, besides helping everyone in the company. I want to really try to start doing it on a bigger level. That's why I'm doing more podcasts. I'm going to be speaking on some stages and doing some different things, only because I want to be able to do something bigger than just taking care of my staff. I want to do it on a bigger level because it brings me passion, and it fulfills me on what I want to do. So, I mean, I want to just be able to give back and really give roadmaps, because I didn't really have that growing up. I mean, my mom and dad, they weren't really business degrees. They didn't really have, a lot of, success, or at least a lot of guidance back then either. They worked their asses off just to be able to make sure they had food on the table and a roof over our head. So I just want to make sure that if I can get to certain levels, I want to reach back and say, hey, I want to be the person that someone can reach out to and ask me anything, because I want to give back what I did over the last 22 years of helping somebody out. It's
so funny. That's the exact same story that I was literally telling Tim last night when we were talking, because I was doing a coaching call with a client, and he was like, well, that's just what you talk to us about all the fucking time. And I'm like, I know. I was like, that's the whole thing, is that, like, I've been doing it on this micro level for so many years, and it's like, I want to be able to help other people on a larger scale, right? And that's why we started the culture movement. It's why we started the private coaching calls. It's why we're doing the retreat in Cayman. Like, we need to bring more people together so that people are doing shit the right way, right? And that people are being taught how to treat their people the right way, and how to make sure that they can make money, and that you can build a culture that you truly believe in and that you're passionate about, right? And if we're not doing that, we're doing a disservice, not only to ourselves, to our people, and to the industry in general.
Exactly. It's changing lives.
Absolutely. Tony, Tony, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for sneaking over here. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode. Remember, like, subscribe, all that bullshit. Fucking share this if you like it. If you didn't like it, don't fucking share it. But I'd really appreciate it if you did anyway, because we don't have any sponsors, remember? That's really all I got. Thank you. Brought to you by Zen for all your nicotine needs. Again, cinnamon and citrus. So what I do is I mix the cinnamon and the citrus, and I put a cinnamon lid on top, and then I put the citrus on the bottom, and then you shake it up, and it's like a fucking box of chocolates, and you don't know what you're getting for Christmas, right? So it's just exciting every time. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. And remember, everybody, be authentic. Or get the fuck out.
Get the fuck out if you can't be authentic. Get the fuck out if you can't be authentic. Yeah.